I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone this evening. Quick introductions from the town. Corrine Chason to my left, she's a Secretary Treasurer Assistant Planner. To my right is Rita Jabor, Manager of Planning Services. Sarah Aubin, Recording Secretary and Planning Assistant. And Shelley, our Deputy Clerk, just stepped out for a moment. From the committee, we have Ray Beneteau, Sherry DeCedar, Phil Polcock, Brian Gray, and my name's Percy Dufour, and I'll be your chair this evening. I need a declaration of conflict of interest. Is there any? Seeing none, so noted. A motion for the adoption of the public agenda for this evening. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Phil. All in favor? That's carried.
Percy? Percy,
Yes.
could I make a comment with regards to the published agenda? Item 6.3, which is the Dixon application at 4976, the fourth concession. Frequently in the proposal, the actual relief is misidentified as 2.4 acres from the 10-acre minimum, and it should actually be 1.4 acres. The application is calling for 8.6 acre severance. So in the agenda and then in the actual application, it's misidentified by a full acre. Just like to make that point with regards to adopting these minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Clarification, Sarah?
Yes, please, Chair, clarification again of the amendment. So item 6.3 of the agenda. Is it in the application, Vice Chair, or is it in the published agenda that was provided by administration?
It's in both. It's in the published agenda and it's in the application.
And you said we note that it's 8.6 acres that is being
Yes.
severed from a 20.23 acre parcel, correct?
Yes, and so the relief is actually from the 10-acre minimum in a state residential. So it's from 8.6 from 10. So it should be identified as 1.4 acre relief.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, so that was actually item 6.4 with regards to the minor variance, not the consent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, no, that's okay. Okay, so 1.4 acres rather than 2.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so
Sorry.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? A motion for adoption of the minutes of November the 16th, 2021. Mover to seconder. Moved by Mr. Beneteau, seconded by Mr. Polcock. Any questions, errors, or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. Adoption of the minutes from September the 21st, 21. Need a mover to seconder. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Ray. Questions, errors, or omissions? All in favor? And that's carried as well. And we do have to have a motion for the October 19th. The closed session. Moved by Ray, seconded by Brian, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Now we're going to move to unfinished business. And that'll be the application, B 3121. That's before us this evening because there wasn't clarity on the information on the application that came before us at the last meeting. All the property owners now have been identified. And there's a feeling that we should take a look at it and see if the results are the same. So in order to do that, we need a motion to reconsider. And that has to come from Mr. Beneteau or Mr. Pocock, the two members that voted in favor of the application. And if that happens,
Sorry, I just point of clarification. Any person that voted in favor, so it could be any of the three. Doesn't necessarily have to be the mover or the seconder. It could be any of the three that could make that motion. So the one,
only two voted in favor.
you would have had to have a majority for that motion to pass.
No,
You're,
we're bringing it back. If we're
Right.
bringing it back, it has to be the members that support it.
no, sorry. For it to come back, any one of the three people that voted in favor of that motion. Right.
When I read it, Shelley, it sounds like, yeah, you need that third person, but you don't need. the other
Okay, but
side.
it doesn't have to be the original two people that moved and seconded.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Okay,
Okay,
all right. So if it's a committee's decision to rehear this application, then I need that motion. So Mr. Beneteau makes that motion and Mr. Pocock seconds it. We need a third member in order to put it back on the floor. Okay, Mr. Gray also, and Sherry as well. Okay. Wait, gotta wait. So, okay. Okay, so there's been new information brought forward, so we'll turn it over to Corey, and then we'll have questions on it after that. Unless anyone who has a question right now, go ahead and ask it if you have, before we deal with the application. Go ahead, Mr. Beneteau.
The way I'm understanding what you're saying is it's already been passed, so why is it coming back?
It wasn't passed, the application was denied.
Okay.
Go ahead, Corey.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. What we're going to do is we're actually going to do a little bit of a recap here. Okay, so back when this was heard previously, there was a motion to approve the application, which was defeated. And the intent of the vote was to deny the application. Okay, so the denial of the application was based on the fact that there was some missing information. The missing information was an authorization form for the Frasers. It was an oversight on the complete application. There was a signature missing, okay? There was also a member that brought in that there was a couple of typos. So this information has been corrected. We've worked with the lawyer to make sure that all of this information is correct. We have circulated that information to all of you. Okay. Reconsideration of this application is that in order to hear like a fair hearing on this, with all of this information, it is being requested to bring back to you. So here is the information that I'm going to present to you in complete form, and then you can evaluate it then, and then make a motion based on hearing the complete information. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick recap because this should be all familiar to you. And I'm just going to highlight the items that we did get clarification on. So as you can see here on the PowerPoint, we have a property that has a sewer easement is being proposed, and it's across 3 properties. Okay, they are listed here: vacant land, County Road 13, 108, County Road 50, 116, County Road 50, with clarification that 116 County Road 50 East actually has 2 properties on it. Those 2 properties have been identified as 126 County Road 50 and also 118 County Road 50. Okay, so what happens in those situations is we have a 1 parcel. It's identified on MPAC, okay, for tax purposes, and that's 116, but there are 2 houses on it, and those 911 addresses have 911 addresses assigned to them. So one of the members brought that up for clarification. Thank you very much. And we've included that in your packages. So the previous hearing held on September 21st. And again, that was a motion to approve the application. It was defeated. Okay. So in the next slides, I'm just going to give you the quick recap of what the application looks like. Okay. So here you can see that sewer easement and the location of it crossing those properties. We have Mr. Gorski on the left-hand side. That's Joseph Gorski. Then we have Mr. Bernie Gorski across that property there. And then we have the Fraser's property that you can see it just crosses the driveway. And all of this is to be in favor of North 42 Winery. Now, just to recall that the sewer line is actually in the ground. It was in 2016. That was passed through council, and at that point in time, no easement was created. Okay. The owners of North 42, they do want to bring this forward so that if they needed to do any maintenance on this property in the future, and if any of the Gorskis or the Frasers was to sell their property, they want to make sure that this easement is established in order for them to ever get in and be able to fix a problem if it arises on that sewer easement or that sewer itself. Okay. So as you can see down there at the bottom, there is the clarified information. And in the package, you now have the signed authorization form that was missed for the complete application the first time this came around. Okay, next slide, please. Quick recap on the policies that are fulfilled in this case. We looked at the provincial policy statement. We had no conflicts. The official plan does have policies that state that servicing policies, we encourage full municipal sewer hookup. They are preferred. And easements are supported in the official plan for technical and legal purposes such as easements. The zoning bylaw states that no development, this is compliant with the zoning bylaw because no development is proposed. The infrastructure is already in the ground as a private system, okay? And now I'm gonna lose my voice, sorry guys. Existing uses all comply with the A1.1. Next slide, please. So as before, nothing has changed on this set of conditions. These are the typical conditions that you would see with the easement, okay? The only one that you're looking at that is the change for an easement of this type would be that the easement be registered on title to the satisfaction of the town of Essex. Okay, so before the easement is finalized, Mr. Jerry Goldberg, acting on behalf of the parties involved, would circulate that document to us in draft and make sure that we're satisfied with those provisions. Okay. And then if this were to be considered today for approval, all conditions listed here would have to be fulfilled by November 16th of the year. So upon circulation, as you will recall, we did not have any objections to this application from external agencies, internal agencies, or the public. And at this point, that concludes my recap of this, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. We do have Mr. Jerry Goldberg in the audience with us, speaking on behalf of the parties. And we also have Suzanne, and I do apologize if I say your last name. I believe it's Dazak, and Mr. Martin Gorski joining us.
Okay, thank you, Corinne. Just a reminder to the committee that in order to reverse the decision that was originally made, we need 66%. Just to bring the application forward, we
Through the
need
chair,
66%.
that majority, you've already met that criteria. You've already passed that. That was the requirement to reconsider. To bring this matter back to reconsider, you had to have the majority, which you've already had. You are now dealing with this matter as though it is a new application, which I think, is the majority. So your decisions, you're looking at this as though it's completely new.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Goldberg, do you have anything to add?
First, thank you for Corinne for laying everything out in a proper order, and I believe all the members do understand it. Thank you also for passing and approving the reconsideration. As Corinne said, this was, sewer line was prepared, engineered, and approved by council 5 years ago. And they just want to recognize the easement. Conditions are satisfactory. As Corinne said, there are no objections. It makes sense. It just recognizes what's there and allows, as Corinne said, for the proper maintenance in the future. And if there are any specific questions, I'm here, and as are my clients, to address them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Beneteau.
Property is ever sold, does this go with the property? Like,
That stays with the
That
property.
stays with the
If
property?
it's a
Okay.
99-year easement, that stays with the property for that length of time.
okay, that's all I need to know.
Ryan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a question about when this easement goes across the Tom municipal drain, is it underground? Is there some kind of protection in town for when there has to be clearing or absolutely anything with regards to the drain?
The municipal drain overrules. They have a working side and they have the right to enter the property and work on that side. So they have a right to go on that property to do the work
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
under the municipal act.
But yeah, so just, and the other, my question, when it crosses the drain, is it underground at that point in time?
Yes,
Martin, or
yes,
Crosses,
it's very much underground at that point in time. If you would
great,
like
thank you,
specific, yeah.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
okay, Corinne?
Was going to chime in there too, but Mr. Gorski answered the question there for Mr. Gray that I believe it was a directional bore when they went underneath the drain. Okay, that's just what I wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Mhm.
Is there any other questions from anybody? Jerry, Bill? All right, seeing none? I'll call the question. Need a motion. Motion on the application. Moved by Mr. Pocock, and can you read out what your
To accept the application as it stands and with all recommendations put out by the town.
a seconder for that motion? Mr. Beneteau. Questions? All in favor? Board members vote in support, and I want to be recorded as I don't support it. So you could just add that in the minutes. That's all that has to be done.
So are you, sorry, through the chair, are you requesting a recorded vote? Typically,
I'm just saying I want to be recorded in the minutes
so-
as opposed.
so typically, okay, we can,
That's it. Okay, so the application has been passed, it's carried. So you can move forward with your application. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Next on the list this evening is A 2321. I don't need either Michelle or Michael Tupin. I'll turn it over to Corrine.
Mr. Chair. Okay, next application is for the property that's located at 837 Erie Blue. That's in Colchester South, Ward 3. So just a high level note here, the proposal that you're going to be looking at is relief for 2 items. It's relief for the maximum gross floor area for a detached garage. And it's also relief for that garage for the maximum height permitted for that accessory structure. Okay, Sarah, let's go to the next slide. Okay, looking here, you can see the property. Property is 80 feet by 300 feet in size. You can see that on the left-hand side. Middle picture just zoomed in so you can see what's actually going on this property. So just for a little bit of background for the committee's information, Mr. Tupin is actually doing construction on, he's putting a second story on the house, but he's also putting a second story on the garage. So the reason for why we are here today, though, is only to deal with the garage. Okay, so the garage itself, as you can see here, is existing. You have a proposal for 2 things. Okay, you have a proposal that they are going to work with the existing garage and they are going to bump out one of the walls that's on the roadside. And they're going to bump that out by a 12 by 24 addition. That's one of the reasons why they're here today for a minor variance. They need consideration to go over the minimum accessory structure size, okay? Because right now that existing structure is below 750 square feet, okay? It's 588 square feet right now. So just bumping that out with that small addition off of on the roadside, okay, they're going to be over that footprint of 750 square feet. So just to note for the committee's information, you know that we have in our zoning bylaw, we do allow a combined accessory structure footprint or square footage. Okay, so if you had 2 accessory structures, you could add them up together. You got to be under 1,000 square feet. But for one structure, we cap it at 750 square feet. Okay, so being this said, they're bumping out that existing structure on the footprint. That's one minor variance. Okay. Now the second minor variance, and just go to the next slide, Sarah. Okay. The second minor variance is for putting a second story on top of that garage. So mind you, they're doing that little addition to open up the footprint a little bit on the base. Okay. But then they're putting that second story over top. And if you can see here, you'll see a dormer over half of that garage on the second story. That second story, okay, the applicant is proposing, they need some room to do a little bit of a workshop area. They want to put their 2 cars underneath on the main floor. And that loft, okay, is only on that second part of the structure. Okay. So the second item for minor variance is the variance for height. Okay, because in our zoning bylaw, we only allow a 1-story accessory structure. Okay, we do, in some cases, allow for a second story if it comes to the committee. So that's why it's before you here today. Okay, so just a couple things about the story height. Okay, the zoning bylaw for a 1-story structure, accessory structure, is 13 feet. That's measured from the grade to the bottom of the eave. Okay, so in that, I know it's pretty small, you can't probably see the actual items here, but where Sarah's pointing to, oh, go back one. Yep, where Sarah's pointing to, you'll see that there's actually 8 feet for each story that's described where her cursor is. Okay, so those total together, 8 plus 8 equals 16 feet. So 13 feet is the allowed story height. So what they're asking for is that 3 extra feet plus that second story, obviously, that's combined. Okay, that's what they're asking for, relief in height. You will notice there that the height from the peak down to the grade is 20 feet total. Okay, the existing structure is approximately 15 feet high right now. Okay, so on that, you'll see the existing structure, and then below, you'll see what is being proposed. Just a couple things to note on that site plan that's on the left-hand side. You will notice the location of the septic system. Okay, so it's not interfering with that. This property is on septic. This property is also located on a private road. Okay, so there is no drainage or services for this property at this location. Now, one other item to note, that the owner wishes to do this as a workshop. He is not requesting for a second dwelling unit. Okay, although this could be potentially converted into a second dwelling unit, especially with our new bylaw that's through. However, there would be a point where he would have to go to the building department in order to get permission and permitting a second dwelling unit there. At that point in time, our building department would send him back over to the Committee of Adjustment if he ever wanted to convert this. So in the plans as submitted, there is no fixtures in this structure. So there's no water or there is no bathrooms proposed or kitchen or anything like that. It's strictly a workshop. Okay, next slide, please. If you've done your site visits, this is what you'll be familiar with. You can see here the garage is set back from the house. And also to note, you'll notice how close this property is to the shoreline. So in the upper right, you'll see how close the house sits to the break wall. And then you'll also see the neighboring site at the bottom on the other side. Perfect. You'll see where the house sits. Okay, so you can see that the house is more forward than the garage. There is a component there that they overlap a little bit, but one of the things that we wanted to note here is they are working with the existing structure where it stands today. One of the things that was brought forward, just so that the committee knows, is this layout was brought forward due to the fact that the owner had to research his information with IRCA, his proposal with IRCA first, and because it's next to the shoreline. So when you have those situations, he needs a permit from the Conservation Authority. The Conservation Authority advised him that if you are looking to do any renovations to this project or this property, in order for you not to have to go through new construction criteria, you could work with the existing structures. So they suggested to him that a second story may be the most efficient way of adding to the structures without having to meet new construction criteria. And that's what brings him to the committee also today, is that's why he wants to do these second stories on these structures instead of opening up the footprint. Next slide, please. Now on this, as we always look at minor variance applications, we're reminded that we need to satisfy the 4 tests of a minor variance. First one, general intent of the OP and the zoning bylaw are maintained. So as you guys know, single detached dwellings and garages are permitted in the Lakeshore residential designation. Using a garage for a personal workshop, parking of vehicles, and creating a storage space area are all permitted uses. This proposal satisfies all other zoning bylaw provisions for the R1.1. The next one states that the proposed variance is minor and desirable for the appropriate land use. This garage will support that main use. The current garage is under the maximum allowed 750 square feet, but this addition will bump it out over that 750 by 132 square feet. As I noted about that 1,000 square feet for a combined accessory structure footprint that we do allow in the zoning bylaw. The impact of this proposal on the neighboring sites is considered to be minimal due to the garage being set back further on the property and behind the western dwelling. This will not impede any sight lines or encroach into the amenity area, which is considered to be the lakefront area of the neighboring property. Is it compatible with the character and the neighborhood? Number 3, this proposal will fit into the character of the neighborhood as it's proposing to renovate existing structures. The neighborhood is made up of single and double-story homes and cottages with detached structures. Expansion of this garage is considered minimal because of that footprint change. And lastly, the variance deals with circumstances particular to the site and development. The workshop and garage storage, it's for personal use. as stated by the applicant. There is limited storage, he stated, in the dwelling due to its size, hence why he wants to do more renovations to the house. And there is that need for parking 2 vehicles underneath, as well as keeping lawn equipment. The owner has restrictions, as I've noted, due to IRCA's approval. So he felt that the best solution was to work with that layout that they had suggested and to also ask for the town for relief from this bylaw. Upon circulation to internal departments, we did not receive any objections. Comments received from IRCA, no objections, provided that the works were undertaken in their approval as provided. Couple things here. I did receive one letter of support from the westerly neighbor, and it reads, "To whom it may concern. As the owners of the properties of 839 and 841, we are writing this to acknowledge that we have no issues or no problem with our neighbor, Mike Tupin, adding a second story to his existing garage. If you need further information, please contact us." And that was a thank you from Bernie and Kathy Compo. That was next door. And then further, I did receive one comment. I've circulated that to all with regards of concerns. And that's from the property owners that are across the street from this property. And it reads, "Please accept this letter of concern dealing with the applicant, Michael Tupin. We own the farmland across from his property. A few years ago, he put in a drainage trench leading to the road. He then put a pipe under the road directing the water into this field, into our field. We paid thousands of dollars to put up a berm to protect our land. We are not interested in playing that game again. We contacted Kevin Carter and he came out to assess what was going on. We were told it was a private road. We would like to know where the water is going to run with this new addition. We are looking for some guidance. Thank you kindly concerning this matter." That was Marvin and Linda Marentate. And for the committee's information, I did talk to Marvin and Linda Marentate today, just to follow up to make sure that this information here that I'm reading to you was okay to read to you. And then to also, if there was anything that I needed to elaborate on. One of the things I would like to point out to the committee, I have talked to Lindsay Dean, our superintendent for drainage. She did confirm private road, and that there is no drainage facilities down this road that are owned by the municipality. So in those cases, there is, for surface water, rainwater coming down from the sky, there is no right of drainage for dealing with surface water, she mentioned to me. So that means that everybody, if you do not have drainage access, you have to contain your water to your property. That is also one of the things that anytime that you apply for a building permit, that is one thing that you also have to satisfy through that process to ensure through property standards that you are containing your water accordingly. I have forwarded this over to the owners, and you can direct your questions to them on this. But also one thing to note is that the property is on Lake Erie, and there is accessible potential for drainage out to the lake. At this point in time, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. We do have Mr. Michael Tupin with us, who's the applicant, and we also have Mr. Wayne Mills joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. On the application, Mr. Mills, are you speaking on behalf of Mr. Tupin or? Mr. Mills?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Are you speaking on behalf of the application?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
It's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair Dufour, committee members and town staff. My computer went silent there for a couple minutes. Sorry about that. I think Corinne did an excellent job giving you a description of what we're asking for. It is minor in nature. Mr. Tupin has no intention of using the garage for residential use. There won't be an apartment in there. No future dwellings or anything are planned. He has 4 cars that he wants to keep in the garage. He wants to put a hoist in the garage to lift 2 cars, to park 2 cars underneath. That's why he needs the height. His original proposal would have been to make the garage bigger as far as the footprint, but due to IRCA regulations, that was not possible. So the next best thing and the only thing he could do was go up with the garage. So that's why we're before you tonight with a small addition, 12-foot by 24-foot addition, and then the 2-story. The second story over the 12 feet, that's for a workshop, woodworking shop. Obviously, that wouldn't fit in his house very well, and he wants to keep it separate from his garage because of dust and things like that. So the little workshop will be separate totally from the garage, and then the rest of the garage will be cathedral ceiling right up to the peak, which will give a high garage, which would allow for the room for the cars. I think that's basically it in a nutshell, and we're hoping for a favorable response from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Questions from any of the members on the committee? Mr. Pocock.
Through you, the chair, I just want to confirm either with Corinne or Mr. Mills, is there any water or any sort of like a wash basin in the garage currently, or planning on going in after?
Through Mr. Chair, I'd like to respond to that if I can.
Go ahead, Mr. Mills.
There's no plans for there being a wash bay in the garage or any type of drainage or washing vehicles in the garage. That's not in the plan. As far as other drainage for the property, like Corinne had said, they do have drainage toward the lake that they can use. So property drainage, certainly they can go toward the lake. When they do the addition, the building department would be inspecting everything and making sure any drainage was done properly, which is they do in all cases.
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
you're right, Mr. Mills. That would be controlled by the building department for the control of the water. Anyone else have any questions? I'll go to Brian and then Ray.
Yeah, so is there any concern with the septic, size of the septic field, considering the size of the lot? And the addition to the house is significant. And I realize it's not part of this application, but it could adversely affect the size of the septic system that would be required. So between that and and I feel the necessity of putting in the drainage to the lake to solve the issue with the Marintate farm, I would just like if there's any comments from any of the town staff with regards to that, Corinne, please.
I can ask Corey, but I believe that'll be addressed by the building inspector at the time when they go for the building permit.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Does that answer your question? Or you want to hear Corey?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you for doing that. I just like to note that I understand the problem with the Marintates and with the issue of people being responsible for their own water and drainage. So let's see how this goes from here.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. One thing to add, Brian, and I do appreciate that question. Absolutely. We have sent over the information from the Marintettes to Mr. Kevin Carter as well, as part of this package, so that he will be aware that this item came up at the Committee of Adjustment. So it kind of flags him also that, if should this get approved today, that will be part of a point that will be part of this application to him to be, to see that. Okay. And as Percy stated, that septic system will be sized properly for any fixtures, any additions to that second story, and it will be inspected as part of it. So that's all part of the building permit. So just wanted to kind of let you know that I do send any of those comments over as part of the Committee of Adjustment information that goes to the building department.
Thank you, Mr. Beneteau.
Chair, as long as I've been involved in Colchester North, the town of Essex, we never allowed the second story on these garages because, and I'm not trying to paint Mr. Tupin in this picture, but they always they're turning into a loft and it turns into somebody being there. And I know you're supposed to come back to the building department, and everything else, and he says he's not good at, but he may not own this property for the rest of his life. You know what I'm saying? And that was why we never, ever let a second story go on a garage. Now, is there something that's changed somewhere? Because Mr. Mills and I did talk, I've talked to other people, and it's just something that was never been done before.
Yes, it has changed, Mr. Beneteau. I believe you received information on that at last meeting we attended, and there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to come before us that they're going to be new to us because we haven't dealt with them before. And
But are they here now?
they are here now.
And I think one of the questions I asked at that meeting, I could be wrong, but I did say about a second story. If I'm, could be,
Mrs. Jabor, Miss Jabor. We've been here too long.
Yeah, through the chair. On that matter, member Ray Beneteau. So you're referring to second dwelling unit. So nothing's changed with respects to the height of a detached structure such as a garage in a residential district such as this. It's still 1 story. For second dwelling units in agricultural districts, we do allow 2 stories. So in this case, no, for a detached structure, even if a second dwelling unit was proposed here, it'd be limited to 1 story. If they wanted that second story, they'd end up at the Committee of Adjustment.
they never, ever, because you could never put a second story there for a dwelling. It's always been. It hasn't changed yet, has it not?
Has changed.
It hasn't, she says.
Through the chair, it has not changed in terms of height residential districts. It has for agricultural districts. So in this case, no, it hasn't changed. The limit is 1 story, even if it was a second dwelling unit or a detached garage. But the proposal in front of you is simply for a garage, just with that extra height to accommodate that workshop.
But, and through you, Mr. Chairman, but are we not setting up for somebody to all of a sudden sneak in? And I'm not picking on this gentleman here tonight. I'm looking down the road that, he says he's not good at, but he could sell this place tomorrow. And then all of a sudden we wake up and there's somebody living above that garage.
Well, everything's, it's a possibility, but they would still have to come before us.
Yeah.
They would still have to, go ahead,
For
Rita.
you, Mr. Chair, yes, they'd still end up in front of the Committee of Adjustment for that space into a second dwelling unit. I can tell you that at 288 square feet, it's even less than what we allow for an apartment unit. So they'd be coming for a couple variances. But of course, we have bylaws. So of course, people sometimes do things illegally without getting building permits because, they simply don't know. And in that case, we have bylaw enforcement to go out there and investigate.
You okay? Okay. Any other questions? So, Mr. Mills, will he be removing the smaller buildings off of that? Is there not a smaller shed on there?
I believe there is a smaller shed beside the house. I don't think there's any plans to remove it. That I'm not sure about. I've never addressed that with the applicant. I'm not sure if Mr. Tupins spoke to Corrine about that or not.
1 minute.
Just to clarify, Mr. Chair, there is a storage area it is attached to the house. It's like a little lean-to, and that's on the water side of the house. If that's what you're referring to, Mr. Chair, it's attached to the house. So it's technically not a separate accessory structure. Because it's attached, it would be considered part of the house.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the application. I need a motion. Need a motion? Are we moving the application? Are we turning it down? Mr. Beneteau. Mr. Beneteau makes a motion to deny the application. Is there a seconder?
Can we have clarity on that motion to deny? Can you please explain why you would like to deny the application?
Story on the garage.
Or you are only denying one part of the application, not both requests, correct?
We don't have a seconder on a motion yet for discussion. I know you're asking for a clarification on the motion.
Because before you get someone to second it, we need to be clear as to what it is that is very.
So it's not clear what he said because of the second story?
Chair, I apologize. I'm just seeking clarification on the motion. From you just stated, Mr. Beneteau, we are denying, your motion is to deny the second story from the application, not not both variances, only the one variance for the second story. Correct. Thank you.
The seconder for that, Sherry?
Yes.
Questions? All in favor of the motion by Mr. Beneteau? Opposed? It's carried. So, Mr. Mill, do you understand what just took place?
Yeah, the application was denied.
For a second story,
Right.
but you can move forward with the rest.
Point
Well,
of clarification, Mr.
I
Chair.
don't know that that was voted on.
Hang on a minute. Go ahead. Do we need a separate motion for that? For the second part of it? Was for the second story only? Need a second motion now. Yep. That's right. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion for the remainder. Sherry, your motion is?
I'll make a motion for acceptance for the main floor, not including the second story.
Okay, seconder? Bill? Questions? All in favor? That's carried. All Mr. Mills? That part of the application is carried. The
Thank
second
you.
story is denied.
Thank you, committee members, for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Have a nice evening.
You too. Okay, next on the agenda, Richard and Monique Stuhar. Go ahead, Maureen.
Yep, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the next application deals with property address of 344 Erie Street North. That's in Harrow. And the proposal deals with or is requesting relief for maximum accessory structure size. Next slide, please. So here's the property. And you'll see here in green where the location of the proposed 990 square foot structure would be situated on the property. So the property size 150 feet by an irregular shape of 120. The existing garage on this property, it's in a state of disrepair. It is 677 square feet in size. There is also a temporary storage tent of 10 by 20, which is 200. So that added up together, you're looking at approximately a total of 877 square feet that the owners have for storage area. Okay, so an exterior accessory structure. What they want to do is they want to remove that temporary structure in the existing structure that's in disrepair, and they want to construct a new building. And they want to have it all under one roof. And they want to do this in order to store their vehicles and to also have a little workshop area and to also store some lawn equipment. So as you know, the maximum gross floor area for a detached accessory structure is that magic number 750 square feet. But the zoning bylaw also states a combined area of accessory structures to a maximum of 1,000 square feet. So the relief being asked for today specifically is for 240 square feet, and that's over the 750. Okay, next slide, please. Through your site visits, you would see this. Number 2 shows you the condition of the existing structure, and you can also see that temporary structure there. The applicant has expressed that he likes to work on cars, his own cars, and you can see them, some stuff, storage areas. It's exposed to the elements right now, and he'd like to have that all under one roof. Picture number 4 shows you looking back from what is an industrial lot behind him. And you're looking at the property here. So you can see where those 2 trucks are parked. And in the corner there where the tree is, that's where that structure would be located. So pictures 5, 6, and 7 show you that surrounded by this property is this industrial lands, which is Atlas Tube. So one of the questions that usually comes up is, how are they doing for lot coverage? So property area, 14,975 square feet, 1,541 proposed garage of 990 square feet. That gives you a total lot coverage of 2,531 for what is being proposed. If you calculate 40% lot coverage on this property, you're looking at 5,990 square feet. So they are actually well under that. Next slide, please. Okay, quick run through of the 4 tests and how they are satisfied in this case. Number 1, OP and zoning bylaw, single detached dwelling and a garage permitted in the residential designation and use, or R1.1 use. Using a garage for personal workshop, storage space is permitted. The owner wishes to have room for parking of his vehicles and an area to work on them. This proposal satisfies all other zoning bylaw provisions talking about setbacks, lot coverage, and so forth. Number 2, the garage will support the main use of the dwelling. The current garage and temporary storage structure, they add up to 877 square feet right now. The new garage would be 990 square feet. So that's combining that storage area under one roof. Zoning bylaw does allow those combined structures up to a maximum of 1,000 square feet. The impact of this proposal on neighboring properties is considered to be minimal because the site abuts industrial lands to the north and the east. Number 3, is it compatible with the character of the neighborhood? This proposal will allow storage of personal vehicles and clean up the storage that's currently out in the yard. Structure will be tucked behind the house and away from the neighboring dwellings, and there will be no changes to parking or traffic patterns. And lastly, number 4, the variance deals with circumstances particular to this site. The workshop in the garage is for personal use, and he has expressed that he needs to replace this existing structure because it is in that district. Upon circulation of this application to internal department, we did not receive any objections. I received no comments from the public as per the circulation. At this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair, and we have Mr. Richard Struhar and Mr. Steve DeRose joining us today to speak further on this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Corinne. Mr. Stuart, do you wish to speak on the application?
Yes. Mr. Chairperson. She described everything that we're asking for. I'm kind of lost for words here. As far as we want that relief for those extra 240 square feet because he has a lot of vintage vehicles. He repairs them. He's a active mechanic at Rasco Chrysler. So he's very capable of working on his own vehicles, and he's got 3 older vehicles that have been outside to the elements for a very long time that are not on the road that need restoration. One's his wife's vehicle. It's an 86 pickup truck, and he has a couple pickup trucks himself. And actually, he has a 4th one, which is I live on Erie Road, also in Harrow, in my barn, which I need room for my 69 Camaro that I'm working on. So that's about it.
Great, thank you. I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. No questions from anyone? Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak? I think I've missed that a couple times tonight. Sarah, there's no one? Okay, thank you. Need a motion on the application. Move, Mr. Gray.
I move the application as described.
A seconder. Mr. Beneteau seconded. He has a question. Well, that should be included.
That's what I was gonna ask. Is that in the
Should be
conditions?
included in the motion, Mr. Gray, the removal of the structure.
Sure.
So, friendly amendment, it's okay? Yes. Okay. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, it's carried. Thank you. Next application, B3321. Turn it over to Corrine. For Grace and Eric Dixon.
Yep, Grace and Edward Dixon are the next applicants on the list here. Property address is 4976 4th Concession Road. And the proposal is to create a new lot within the estate residential designation and zoning. And the reason why this is being brought forward today, a little bit of back history. There was a previous consent approval for the severance of this property previously, but unfortunately, the conditions, due to the conditions being unsatisfied, it did lapse. So the applicants wish to reestablish an approval for a severance on this property, but they simply want to shift the property line, the proposed property line over a little bit to accommodate an existing driveway. Due to this, there is a requirement for a minor variance. So let's walk you through that. Next slide, please. So here you can see what the property looks like on the left. You'll see that it's not perfectly divided right in half. And that's why we're also looking at a minor variance today. Okay, this property is 20 acres in size. As you all know, we have estate residential in the town of Essex, and the minimum lot size stated in the zoning bylaw is 10 acres. So if they have 20 acres, we can consider lot severances for severing them in half. And in this case, he's also brought this before the Committee of Adjustment for a little bit more consideration, just to deal with a certain stipulation. If you look at the bottom of the screen there on the air photo, you'll notice that there is a driveway. The driveway is completely concrete. And the owner has put some investment into putting this driveway in, and he wishes to retain it. And if this severance is successful, the property line would just be shifted just to the outskirts of that driveway. As you can see there, the intention is to make a nice linear shaped property. So instead of it being a zigzagged type of application or property line so that we could still honor the 10 acres. What they have opted for is doing it straight on. Okay. So the applicant was in favor of doing a bit of a zigzagged type of property line, but we do not favor those typically. We do like to have characteristic property lines, nice and straight, to make sure that it's characteristic with the other lots surrounding. Couple things just to note, as Mr. Gray did point out, my apologies with the typo with regards to the relief being requested. So the retained lot, 11.7, slightly rounded, okay? But the severed is 8.6. That means that a relief of 1.4 acres is being requested today. Next slide, please. Just a little refresher what the property looks like. You can see that nice concrete driveway there. There is also a swale on that side of the driveway that he does want to keep. So the property line will just be just opposite that swale, and that's for drainage purposes. That is obviously a private swale in this case. What else to show you there? There is that large barn structure. The new property line would be spaced accordingly and satisfy the setbacks for side yard in that case. Next slide, please. So just a note here, you're looking at relief for 1.4 down from the 10 acres. Okay, so 8.6 is the acreage that we're talking about and simply shifted from that center mark. Okay, next slide, please. Quick overview from our planning comments. Here is the rundown of how it meets the policies. For the consent, it meets the provincial policy statement. It is compliant with the severance policies in the PPS. The official plan states that you can have severances in estate residential. It has to be an orderly development pattern and to be compliant with the minimum lot sizes. And that's why we have the minor variance for your consideration today to be that zoning is what zoning as I just mentioned, sorry. Services, we do have a private septic system on the retained. A private septic system would be needed for the severed. That is acceptable. There's also municipal water that is available, but it's across the street. They'd have to bring it in. And then there is drainage ditches along this concession road for drainage. And lastly, the minor variance, how does this satisfy the 4 tests? It is in the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. It is considered minor in nature because the impacts to neighboring properties is minimal. These properties are very spaced and they're large in size. And is it characteristic with the other lots in estate residential? As you all know, we do have some variances in estate residential for the lots. This is minimal from the minimum 10 acres. And it is specific to this site because we are looking at consideration for the location of that driveway itself. At this point, oh, sorry, we did circulate this application, obviously, and we did not receive any objections from external agencies, internal departments, or from the public in this case. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. We do have Mr. Dixon and Grace available here to speak to the matter further.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dixon, do you wish to speak on the application?
Yeah, I think Corinne, Mr. Chair, has outlined the specifics and, subject to any questions that the rest of the committee members might have. I don't think there's much I can add to it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the committee members? Mr. Pocock.
Will there be a separate road going in or across the ditch, a culvert of some sort to be installed, but if the application is approved?
Mr. Chair, would you like me to answer that?
Well, that would be up to the committee if they put that in a condition that the culvert is installed. You gonna add something to that? Go ahead. Time's up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for the committee's knowledge, normally I put you a nice list of conditions. I do apologize. I just noticed that it's not in here. So the typical conditions, I'm sorry, Ray. The typical conditions are typical to a consent. One of the conditions that administration would suggest is that a culvert be installed within this time frame, which is 1 year's time. This is a municipal drain, but it is of minimal size. So there was discussion between myself and the applicant, and they would like to prefer that the new owners put the culvert into where they wish to put it in. Okay, so it does have access to the road. Unfortunately, in this specific case, though, for it to be not accessing through Mr. Dixon's property, they would have to put in a culvert. So typically, I do recommend that we install a culvert. The only thing is that Mr. Dixon has expressed that, is there some way that we can defer that owner? And I stated that we may accept an undertaking, and he can work that out with the new owner. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Beneteau.
Can we pass it the way it sits without them making it put in with a year so that, say, before the deed is stamped or anything through Mr. Chair?
We don't know if there's going to be a new owner.
I know, but that's what I'm saying, like,
To be one. If you want to pass the application and make one of the conditions that they must install the bridge, you can do that.
but not within the year period. You know what I'm saying?
Within a year's time. It has
They
be
have to
done
do it
within
within that year's period? Is that what you're saying?
It has to be done within a year before the application is before they meet all the conditions.
Okay.
Point of information.
Through you, Mr. Chair. What Mr. Chair, just to clarify, is if you add it as a condition, then it has to be dealt with in 1 year's time. There is the option for him to do an undertaking stating that give us a little bit more time to put the culvert in once we transfer it. Okay. But it is up to the committee if you want to include it as a condition. But you don't have to put it as a condition in this case. Okay.
That's a committee's decision.
That's what I'm saying. I think you want it as a condition.
Yeah,
but-
that's,
Okay.
is everybody spoken on the application?
Point of information, though.
Phil, you
I have a
have a
question.
question? You have a question, Phil?
Yeah, through the chair. Didn't they change the timeline to 2 years for making these applications approved to be done? I thought there was a
No.
change this year for
The
2 years.
timeline's not changed. The problem that runs into when it's a municipal drain and you have to go through the Drainage Act, if you don't move on it right away, sometimes it could extend past a year, depending on how quick council appoints an engineer and for the engineer to bring the report forward and then go through the process. If it's just the road ditch, and I'm not sure that is a municipal drain now, I don't really think it is.
It isn't.
And therefore, it's just a matter of going to the building department and getting your permit and it can be installed.
Okay.
Go ahead, Rita.
For you, Mr. Chair, I just want to add to Member Pocock's point. They are proposing, the Planning Act they're proposing to change the number of years that you get to meet those conditions too. But that hasn't passed yet, so it's still a year. I just wanted to make that point, and when it does change, I will inform.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I'll just you got a question? I just want to make a comment on the application. It's a state residential, and we've faced a lot of opposition by not passing 10-acre lots. This is a 20-acre parcel. It's very simple to have that separated in 2 10-acre parcels. I understand the cement driveway. I was there, I looked at it. You could draw the line and go around and leave that driveway in, but you have to run behind the building to square out 10 acres. That makes a clean severance. That's just my opinion. Looking for a motion. Mr. Bennett,
I'll make the motion. We go with the application.
a seconder. Sherry, questions? Bill,
So are we going to have a recommendation or a thing for the culvert to be installed at some point, or are we just going to make it as is?
yeah, Mr. Bennett forgot to add that into his motion as one of the conditions. And Corinne, have all the other conditions been explained to the applicant? Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions? All in favor? That's opposed, none, that's carried. Okay, and on the minor variance, I need a motion. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Ray, all in favor? That's carried as well. Thank you. Thank you. Your application
Thank
has
you.
passed, both the minor variance and the consent application. Okay,
Thank you very
Thank
much. Bye-bye.
okay.
Yeah. Now I get out of this thing.
Any correspondence? New business? Seeing none. Any notice of motions? Seeing none. Motion by Ray Beneteau at the August 17, 2020. Clarification requirements of minor variance in the agricultural zone. Who is to speak on 9.1? Oh, you? Go ahead. It's not a motion.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So what was put forward as a notice of motion back in August by member Beneteau, Mr. Beneteau, and he stated that wanted a little bit more clarification and information about why it is that every time we have a surplus dwelling or a lot line adjustment, why there was the need to ensure that there was a minor variance associated with that application. And there was some concerns. There was some concerns about if there was anything that could be done to combine them together or whatever have you. So is everything okay, Cheryl? Okay. Do you want to add anything right now or you'll talk about it after? Okay. So in this notice of motion, it states here to provide clarification on the requirements of the agricultural zone of a surplus consent or lot addition. Okay. So on the next slide here, we talked a little bit about this previously, but these are the two items that we usually have brought forward. And one thing I wanted to just kind of reiterate to the committee was the zoning bylaw. It's a municipal law that is very, very rigid. There's no gray areas or allowances for waiving any of the provisions unless it comes to you. So that's why we have the committee of adjustments set up. So when any application to build anything goes to the building department, they have to stick to these strict laws. Okay. But if they can't, if they have any justified reasons to not satisfy these items listed, and this one is the agricultural district, for example, they have to be turned over to put their case before you. Okay. And that's where we look at, the four tests of the minor variance. We also look at the PPS, we look at the official plan and so forth to see if we consider, okay, is this justifiable? So I brought this one up, for example, and I just wanted you to really look at the wording that we have here. The one that we always seem to get hooked on that triggers those minor variances is lot width and lot area. Okay. And the wording in it specifically says the lesser of, for width, it says the lesser of 60 meters, 200 feet, or as existing, unless otherwise specifically provided. So if it's not 200 feet exactly, if it's any less than that, even if it is a foot less, okay, it has to, it triggers a minor variance. We do not have any language in our zoning bylaw that would stipulate, okay, if you have this type of scenario, you can waive the need for a minor variance, okay? So right now, existing today, we do not have anything that allows us to waive that, okay? So in these types of scenarios, it's a black and white document. If it doesn't match perfectly with this, we as staff, we have to bring it to you, the Committee of Adjustment, for relief, okay? Next page, please, or next slide. Just showing you those scenarios that you always see. And it is unfortunate that, these are just small lot line adjustments. But the point is that if you do not comply, that is the whole purpose of that minor variance. We had a couple of applications where it was under an acre for just a lot line adjustment, and we had to bring it back to the committee, and it was specifically to the wording that we have to comply with. Mr. Chair, I'm here to answer any questions with related to this topic.
Did you want to say something before Ray speaks?
For future reference, all notices of motion, whether it's to have a discussion or for clarification, does require a seconder and a vote by the members. Okay, so just a point of clarification, just for future reference.
This is just for information only. So on your motion, you need a seconder?
You're already discussing.
So on a notice of motion, when you're bringing something forward, you need a seconder at that time? For information only? Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Ray.
My question is, what you're telling me, if somebody's coming in for a surplus dwelling and they're only going to go, oh, Corinne, I only need 180 feet. They should get 200 then, so they don't have to do the.
So if somebody comes to us for a surplus dwelling, and I brief them on the items that they are compliant with the zoning bylaw and what they're not, and then I'm assessing it and saying, okay, if you bring this forward, you're going to need a minor variance for these items. And if they do come to me and they say, I only got 180 foot frontage for that surplus dwelling, okay, I'm going to state you have to go to the Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance on lot width
But that's
for
what I'm
that
saying, is
surplus dwelling.
if they come in and say, I have 200 feet, they don't need a minor variance then.
Through you, Mr. Chair, one of the things that the committee looks for is how much agricultural land they're taking out of production. So if they wanted to satisfy that zoning bylaw, that one item for lot width, and say they had that area mowed in grass, and they could satisfy 200 feet, okay? Then it would be up to the committee to look at where they drew those property lines. And we also have something in our zoning bylaw that stipulates if you're doing a surplus dwelling, you should be at least under 2.4 acres, I think it is, Rita. So, they can work that a little bit to make sure that they're trying to satisfy the zoning bylaw as much as possible. So you're absolutely right. It would be good for them to try and make it 200 acres
Everybody
or
should just come
200
in and
feet.
get 200 by 200 when they're severing off their
Absolutely.
$900.
Well,
No?
usually what happens is if you have a couple of minor variances that you're asking for, well, I'll tell you why.
Can I answer it, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
So through the chair, so with surplus dwelling lots, they're gonna be new lots, right? So that's a lot that's never been in existence and it's gonna be under 100 acres. You're not gonna create a surplus dwelling lot that's 100 acres. So you're almost always going to need a variance for lot area. You may not always need a variance for lot width because some people can satisfy the 200.
And that's what I'm saying.
But you're almost always going to need it for lot area for both the severed and the retained parcel. Because it's 100-acre minimum or as existing, and that surplus dwelling lot is not as existing. You're creating at that night.
But most of them, well, but they are sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. They are existing because most of them are surplus dwellings that people have lived in and they're just selling their farm off. You know what am I not right?
So through the chair, the dwelling's existing, but not the lot. The lot you're creating, the surplus dwelling lot, it's separate from the farm when you approve it.
I'm confused.
No, that explains it. That clears it up. Are you done? No, not you.
It's through you, Mr. Chair. It's at the end of the day, count up how many lots you will have at the end of the day. So if you're starting with one farm and you're severing off that house, what's the total of lots that you have at the end of the day? You're going to have a farm lot and you're going to have a surplus lot. So that's 2. So that's why Rita was saying you're creating a lot, and you're creating a lot in the A1.1 zone. So that means that slide that I showed you, can you show it, Sarah? I appreciate it. So guess what? That new lot that you just created has to conform with, go back a slide. Go back one more slide. There you go. You know, that new lot has to conform with this listing of provisions. And guess what? It doesn't. So, you know, we're going to have to hit you sorry, I don't mean to say, you're going to have to satisfy these zoning provisions and you can't. So you have to get a minor variance. This committee has to look at it and say, we're going to give you consideration. We're going to recognize that you have an undersized width, and we're going to grant you permission to create that lot. So you're going to have 2 lots at the end of the day, not just one.
Okay, thank you. Eventually, I'm going to get back to the rest of the committee here. Shelley, go ahead. Are you okay? Anybody else have any questions? Brian, any questions? You talked too long, I can see that. I need a motion for adjournment. That's Ray and Sherry, all in favor. It's carried. I want to thank everybody tonight. It's been a long night. There's a lot of things going on tonight, so thanks for your patience. Did you want to bring anything else up? No? For the next meeting?
Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
All right. Well, I'm gonna ask What's that? Oh, okay. That's it. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. We only got one application for December, so that's your Merry Christmas.